Greetings, I'm glad to have you on this channel. If you are visiting this channel for the first time, or you've been visiting before but yet to click on the subscribe button, so kindly hit the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be able to get all our materials. So this is where we care about your success in your promotion exam, or you are seeking for appointment into the public service route. Definitely you will write entry exam. So we care about you and your success is our goal. So this is the revised public service rules which took effect in 2023. So we'll be producing this material in series. We started with the general definitions as contained in the revised public service rules, down to appointment. We consider all about appointment. Then we are now on discipline. So this video right now is on discipline as contained in the revised public service rules. So previously in our videos, we looked at the general definitions and then we look at the appointments. Then the appointments, we had four episodes where we covered everything about the appointment. So if you are yet to get all these 4 episodes, including the general definitions, kindly click subscribe and you can do your search. YouTube will be able to bring it to your page. So in discipline, we shall consider the following topics: introduction, then general inefficiency, misconduct, serious misconduct, conduct prejudicial to security of the state, retirement in public interest, disciplinary procedure for a permanent secretary. So these are what we shall consider in discipline, but we shall take them in episodes, into 3 episodes. So in this episode, the first episode on discipline, we shall consider the introduction, then the general inefficiency, and misconduct. So these are the 3 topics we shall consider on discipline. So please look around. If the subscribe button is still on your page, it can come with white background or black background. Then kindly hit it. That will enable you get our materials in real time, and it's not costing you a dime to do that. So you can also like and then share to your friends. And of course, at the end of this video, if you find it value, let's have your comments. Thank you. So introduction. Knowledge of disciplinary rules. It shall be the duty of every officer to acquaint himself with the disciplinary rules and any other regulations in focus. This chapter shall be read in conjunction with guidelines for appointment, promotion, and discipline issued by the Federal Civil Service Commission and the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation. Authority to discipline. The power to dismiss and to exercise disciplinary control over officers in the Federal Civil Service is vested in the Federal Civil Service Commission. Then delegated powers. The Federal Civil Service Commission has delegated full disciplinary powers to permanent secretaries and the heads of extraministerial offices in respect of officers on salary grade level 13 and below, with the exception of the power of dismissal, which has been delegated only from grade level 06 and below. Removal of officer from office. No officer shall be removed from service by a Director General or Chief Executive Officer without the approval of the board, except officers on salary grade level 6 and below, based on the recommendation of the Junior Staff Committee. So then moving on to general inefficiency. So definition. General inefficiency consists of omissions or incompetence, the cumulative effect of which shows that the officer is not capable of discharging efficiently the duties of the office he holds. Then drawing attention to shortcoming. It shall be the duty of every superior officer, as soon as he observes any fault or shortcoming in the work of an officer subordinate to him, to bring it to the officer's notice and to record that such has been done in order to improve the officer's usefulness and efficiency. He may be deployed to where his capacities are best suited or trained to enhance his capacity. The removal for general inefficiency. Before the proceedings for the removal of an officer for general inefficiency may be commenced, he must have been warned on 3 occasions in writing. The performance of duties of a pregnant female officer. No female public servant shall be required to resign her appointment or retire by reason of pregnancy alone, but if her condition interferes with the efficient performance of her duties, she may, at the discretion of management, be given lighter duties. Removal of temporary staff for inefficiency. Permanent secretaries or heads of extraministerial offices are authorized, subject to the provisions of the Labour Act Cap 198 and of individual letters of consideration for appointment, that is Form Gen 69 and Gen 69A, to terminate the employment of staff at their discretion, provided that prior to the termination of any such staff, officer has been informed of the grounds on which it is proposed to terminate his appointment and has been given an opportunity to submit representations on why he should not be terminated. Similarly, prior to the termination of an officer's service for inefficiency, such officer shall be warned of his shortcomings and given opportunity to improve or to offer a satisfactory explanation of his failure to perform his duties efficiently. Notice of withholding or increment. Immediately a permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office, in the exercise of his delegated powers, decide to withhold or defer the increment of an officer, he shall so inform the officer in writing, stating the reason and, in the case of deferment, the period of deferment. Notification of defects. Where the powers are not delegated and the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office considers that the increment of an officer should be withheld or deferred, he shall report the circumstances to the appropriate committee a decision. If the decision if the decision is that the increment should be withheld or deferred, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office will thereupon inform the officer in writing, stating the reason and, in the case of deferment, the period of deferment. If the committee decides that the increment should be granted, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office will take action in accordance with the rule. Then, in all cases of withholding or deferment of increment, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office shall inform the accountant general of the federation and the auditor general for the federation. Then, restoration of increment. Immediately on deciding to restore an increment which had earlier been withdrawn or deferred, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office should bring the defect to the notice of the officer. Then, effective date of termination for inefficiency. In all cases of termination for inefficiency, notice of termination shall be given. The period of notice shall be 1 calendar month, unless other period is appropriate in the light of a particular officer's terms of service. If it is decided that the officer shall leave the service immediately, he shall be paid emolument equivalent to the period of notice. The period of notice shall include any leave to which the officer is entitled. If the leave is longer than the period of notice, the officer shall be sent on leave and the period of notice absolved the leave. So that takes us to conduct. We are done with general inefficiency. So misconduct now. How do we define misconduct? Definition. Misconduct is defined as a specific act of wrongdoing or an improper behavior inimical to the which can and proved. It can lead to termination and retirement. So that is misconduct. Let me take it again. Misconduct as a specific act of wrongdoing or an improper behavior which is inimical to the image of the service and which can be investigated and proved. It can lead to termination and retirement. So misconduct includes, the act of misconduct includes, we have scandalous conduct. Now under scandalous, the acts that we consider as scandalous conduct are immoral behavior, unruly behavior, drunkenness, foul language, assault, battery. So these are acts of scandalous conduct. Then proceeding, other acts of misconduct include refusal to proceed on transfer, accept posting, habitual lateness to work, deliberate delay in treating official documents, failure to keep records, unauthorized removal of public records, dishonesty, negligence, sleeping on duty, improper or inappropriate or immodest dressing while on duty, hawking merchandise within office premises, refusal to take or carry out lawful instruction from superior officers, malingering, insubordination, and discourteous behavior to the public. So these are acts of misconduct. Then issuing query. As soon as a superior officer becomes dissatisfied with the behavior of his subordinate, it shall be his duty to inform the officer in writing, given details of unsatisfactory behavior, and to call upon him to submit within a specific time such written representation as he may wish to make to exculpate himself from disciplinary action. After considering such written representations as the officer may make within the specified time, the superior officer shall decide whether whether the officer has exculpated himself, in which case he shall be so informed in writing and no further action shall be necessary. Or the officer has not exculpated himself, but it is considered that he should not be punished, in which case the appropriate formal letter of advice shall be issued to him and he shall be required to acknowledge its receipt in writing. Or the officer has not exculpated himself and deserves some punishment, in which case the rule shall apply. Recommendations of tribunals of inquiry. Where a tribunal of inquiry set up by the government makes recommendations of a disciplinary nature an officer, the Federal Civil Service Commission or Board acts on such recommendations, or it has called upon the affected officer to reply to the allegations made against him by the Tribunal of Inquiry. If the officer refuses or neglects to reply to the allegations within a reasonable time or at all, the Federal Civil Service Commission or Board or its agent shall proceed to accept and enforce the recommendation of the Tribunal of Inquiry and take such disciplinary action against the officer as it shall deem appropriate. Then reporting misconduct. It shall be the duty of every officer to report any case of misconduct that comes to his notice to an officer superior to the officer involved. So when an officer's misconduct is brought to the notice of his superior officer, it shall be the duty of that superior officer to report it through his HOD to the Director, Human Resource, without delay. So if the Director of Human Resource considers it necessary that the officer should be interdicted, such recommendation shall be made in the report. Then on receiving the report, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office shall take action in accordance with the rule as appropriate, and if necessary, shall interdict. Then at the appropriate point in the investigation, the officer may be suspended in accordance with the rule. The procedure for misconduct and serious misconduct. This disciplinary procedure for misconduct and serious misconduct. So this is the disciplinary procedure. If it is civil service commission that an officer been found guilty of misconduct and the commission does not consider the alleged misconduct serious enough to warrant proceedings under the rule with a view to the, it may cause an investigation to be made into the matter in such a manner as it considers proper. The officer shall be entitled to know the whole case made against him and shall have adequate opportunity making his defense. If as a request the commission decides that the allegation is proved, it may impose any other punishment upon the officer, such as reduction in rank, withholding or deferment of increment or otherwise. Then postponement against female staff on maternity leave. Postponement of disciplinary proceedings against female staff on maternity leave. Any disciplinary proceedings against a female staff which might otherwise have been taken during the period of her maternity leave shall be postponed until the leave has expired. Such postponement shall not in any way prejudice proceedings against her. Then notification in writing. Unless the method of dismissal is otherwise provided for in these rules, an officer in the Federal Public Service may be dismissed by the Federal Civil Service Commission or Board only in accordance with this rule. So you have one, the officer shall be notified in writing of the grounds on which it is proposed to discipline him. The query should be precise and to the point. It must relate to the circumstances of the offense, the rule and regulation which the officer has broken, and the likely penalty. In serious cases which are likely to result in dismissal, the officer should be given access to any document or reports used against him, and he should be asked to state in his defense that he has been given access to documents. The officer shall be called upon to state in writing within the period specified in the query any grounds which he relies to exculpate himself. Then 2, the query or preliminary letter shall be in the format shown in Appendix H. Then 3, if the officer submits his representations and the Federal Civil Service Commission is not satisfied that he has exculpated himself and considers that the officer should be dismissed, he shall take such action accordingly. Should the officer, however, fail to furnish any representation within this time fixed, the commission may take such action against the officer as it deems appropriate. Then 4, if upon considering the representations of the officer, the commission is of the opinion that the officer does not deserve to be dismissed from the service, but deserves some other punishment, it shall impose on the officer such punishment as it considers appropriate. Then 5, where necessary, the commission may set up a board of inquiry which shall consist of not less than 3 persons, one of whom shall be appointed chairman by the commission. The members of the board shall be selected with due regard to the status of the officer involved in the disciplinary case, to the nature of the complaint which is the subject of inquiry. The head of the officer's department shall not be a member of the board. Then 6. The officer shall be informed that on a specific day, the question of his dismissal shall be brought before the board, and he shall be required to appear before it to defend himself, and shall be entitled to call witnesses. His failure to appear shall not invalidate the proceedings of the board. Then 7. Where witnesses are called by the board to give evidence before it, the officer shall be entitled to put questions to the witnesses, and no documentary evidence shall be used against the officer unless he has previously been supplied with a copy thereof or given access thereto. Then 8. If during the course of the inquiry further grounds for dismissal are disclosed, and the Federal Civil Service Commission thinks it fit to proceed against the officer upon such grounds, the officer shall, by the discretion of the Commission, be furnished with a written statement thereof, and the same steps shall be taken as prescribed in the respect of original grounds. Then 9. Board having inquired into the matter shall make a report to the Commission. If the Commission considers that the report should be amplified in any respect, or inquiry is desirable, it may refer any matter back to the board for further inquiry or report. The Commission shall not itself hear witnesses. 10. If upon considering the report of the board together with the evidence and all material documents relating to the case, the Commission is of the opinion that the officer should be dismissed, such action shall immediately be taken. Then 11. If the Commission does not approve the officer dismissal and does not consider that any penalty should be imposed, the officer shall be reinstated forthwith and be entitled to the full amount of salary denied him if he was interdicted or suspended. Then 12. If upon considering the report of the board, the Commission is of the opinion that the officer does not deserve to be dismissed, but that the proceedings disclosed grounds for requiring him to retire, the Commission shall, without further proceedings, direct accordingly. And 13. All disciplinary procedures must commence and be completed within a period of 60 days, except where it involves criminal cases. So all disciplinary procedures shall commence and be completed within a period of 60 days, except where it involves criminal cases. So that's the procedure for discipline. So moving on, so working for institutions or government agencies during office hours. No officer may render professional assistance to institutions or government agencies during working hours or accept remuneration for it, except with the written permission of the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office, which could be granted if it is in the public interest to do so. The amount of remuneration must be paid into the treasury on deposit until the orders of government as to the share, if any, which may be received by the officer is known. Fines. No fine shall be imposed on any officer as a punishment for an offence committed in the course of his duties. Then powers to surcharge. A. If at any time the public revenue sustains a loss by reason of the neglect or fault of an officer, he will be liable to be surcharged with the amount, and any sums due to him from government may be withheld in satisfaction of such surcharge. Then B, officers defined as workers in section 2 of the Labour Act Cap 198 may be surcharged if the circumstances warrant all papers relevant to the case must be submitted in accordance with the Act to the warrant of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Productivity for approval of the surcharge. The money lending. An officer shall not guarantee or stand as surety for money lent on interest to any other person. Nothing in this rule shall be deemed to prevent members of registered cooperative societies or approved benefit societies from standing as sureties for loans made by the societies, nor shall it be deemed to prevent any officer from placing money in a deposit account in any bank or standing surety for money lent by government to another officer. The hawking merchandise on duty. Officers are prohibited from hawking merchandise or engaging in any other form of trading within the office premises during working hours. Then dress code. No officer shall appear in the office or anywhere in his official capacity dressed in a manner considered improper or inappropriate or immodest. We saw that when we were looking at acts of misconduct. Then unofficial testimonials. In order to prevent the irregular use by non-officials of letters of recommendations or certificates of character, officers are prohibited from giving in their official capacities letters or certificates, whether on official stationery or otherwise. So that is the end of the lesson. We proceed to quiz. So please, for each of the questions, endeavor to attempt each question and note your answers. Endeavor to attempt each of them and note your answers before we finally see the correct answer, so that will enable you to evaluate yourself. So question 1, the power to dismiss and exercise disciplinary control over all officers in the Federal Civil Service Commission is vested on the, so A, head of the Civil Service of the Federation, B, permanent secretaries or heads of extraministerial offices, C, the relevant committees, D, Federal Civil Service Commission. Please note your answers. Question 2. Which of the following can rightly define general inefficiency? A, misuse of official resources, positions or authority for personal gain, control to ethical standards. B, consists of series of commissions and incompetence which shows that the officer is not capable of discharging effectively the duties of the office he holds. Series of absence from duties without permission or reasonable cause leading to disruption of official functions. And D, consists of persistent lateness to duty and abandonment of official responsibilities without lawful excuse. So which is best definition of general inefficiency? So your answers quickly. So for question 1, the correct answer is D. So the power to dismiss is invested on the Federal Civil Service Commission. While for question 2, the correct answer is that general inefficiency consists of series of commissions and incompetence, cumulative effect, which shows that the officer is not capable of discharging effectively the duties of the office he holds. That is option B. So proceeding to question 3. If the permanent secretary or heads of extraministerial office in the exercise of his delegated powers decide to withhold the increment of an officer, he shall, so what shall he do? A. Call the officer to his office and inform him, stating reason for the withholding. B. Direct the account officer to withhold the increment without necessarily informing the officer. C. Inform the officer when the officer noticed that his increment had been withheld. Then D. Inform the officer in writing prior to withholding increment, stating the reason. So which of them is applicable? Question 4. Which body is delegated with the full disciplinary power in respect of salary grade level 06 and below, including the power to dismiss? So A. Permanent secretaries and heads of extraministerial office. B. The director or heads of department. C. The head of service section and D. The junior staff committee. Question 5. Which of these is applicable to a pregnant female public servant whose condition interferes with her efficient performance? A. She may be given lighter duties at the discretion of the management. B. She shall be required to resign her appointment. C. She shall be required to retire voluntarily. And D. She shall be given series of queries as a process to establish inefficiency. So which is applicable for a pregnant female public servant? So quickly your answers. So going through to question 3, the correct answer is option D. So the permanent secretary shall inform the officer in writing prior to withholding increment, stating the reason. Then for question 4, the correct option, the body which is delegated with the full disciplinary powers of grade level 06 and below, including power to dismiss, has been delegated to the permanent secretaries and heads of extraministerial office. That is option A. Why for question 5 too? So for question 5, the correct answer is that she may be given lighter duties at the discretion of the management. So for a pregnant woman, for a pregnant female public servant whose condition interferes with her efficient performance, may be given lighter duties at the discretion of the management. Question 6. The Director General or the Chief Executive has the power to remove officers from service on the grounds of gross misconduct. True or false? State your answer. Question 7. Which categories of officers has the Federal Civil Service Commission delegated the permanent secretary and heads of extraministerial offices the powers to exercise full disciplinary action except dismissal? A. Which category of staff? Grade level 6 and below, grade level 13 and below, grade level 14 and below. Then D. Non-pensionable officers. 8. Which of the following statements is or are not true in respect of officer found to be inefficient? A. The superior officer shall bring to the officer's notice as soon as he observes any fault or shortcoming in the work of the officer and record that such has been done in order to improve the officer's usefulness and efficiency. So which of the statements is or are not true in respect of officer found inefficiency? So B. The officer may be redeployed to where his capacities are best suited or trained to enhance his capacity. Then C. The officer must have been warned on 3 occasions in writing before the proceedings for his removal on general inefficiency may be commenced. And D. The officer is relieved of his duties, so which is not appropriate. So quickly your options. Going to question 6, your options. So the correct answer to question 6 is false. So the Director General or Chief Executive has no power. They have no power to remove officers on ground of misconduct or gross misconduct. No. So it's false. Then for option 7, the correct answer is grade level 13 and below. So the categories of officers on grade level 13 and below, the power to exercise full disciplinary action has been given to PANSEC and heads of extraministerial office except the power to dismiss. So it's for grade level 13 and below. So for question 8, the correct option is that the officer is relieved of his duties. No. So which of the following statements are not true in respect of officer found to be inefficient? No. He will not be relieved of his duty just like that. So, but the superior officer shall bring to the officer's notice as soon as he observes any fault. And of course, the officer may be redeployed to where his capacities are best suited. Yes. Then of course, the officer must have also been warned on 3 occasions in writing before any proceeding for his removal on general inefficiency may be commenced. So he cannot instantly be relieved of his duty. So the correct option is D. So moving on, question 9. Which body is authorized subject to the cap 198 and of individual letters of consideration for appointment from Gen 69 and Gen 69A to terminate the employment of temporary staff for inefficiency at their discretion? So which body is authorized to do that? Is it the senior staff committee, the junior staff committee, permanent secretaries or heads of extraministerial offices, or the head of departments with recommendation from the officer supervisor? So who has that authority? Then question 10. In terminating of temporary officers' appointment, the following shall apply except. In terminating of temporary officers' appointment, the following shall apply except. So which shall not apply? A. Period to the termination of any such staff, the officer has been informed of the grounds on which it is proposed to terminate his appointment. B. The officer shall undergo disciplinary measures period to termination of appointment. C. The officer had been given an opportunity to submit representations on why he should not be terminated. And D. The officer shall be warned of his shortcomings and given opportunity to improve or to offer a satisfactory explanation of his failure to perform his duties efficiently. So which is appropriate? So moving on to the answers. So question 9, the correct option is C. The permanent secretaries or heads of extraministerial offices have been authorized subject to the provision of the Labour Act Cap 198 and of individual letters of the consent to terminate the employment of temporary officers for inefficiency at their discretion. So it's the permanent secretaries. While for question 10, in terminating of temporary officers' appointment, the following every other one shall apply except that the officer shall undergo disciplinary measures period to termination of appointment. No, he cannot be subjected to disciplinary measure before terminating his appointment. No, but every other condition applies. Then question 11. Which of the following statements is correct in the case of deferment of increment of an officer? So in case of deferment, which is correct? A. Period to the deferment, the senior staff committee informs the officer in writing state deferment senior staff committee that writes to the officer. So B. The deferment has to take effect before informing the officer. Is it true? Would they defer first before informing him? Then C. Period to the deferment, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office informs the officer in writing stating the period of deferment. And D. Period to the deferment, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office informs the officer in writing stating the period of deferment, which should not be more than 12 months. So which of them is the most appropriate? Then 12. The recommendation to the permanent secretary and heads of extraministerial office in respect of the dismissal of officers on grade level 06 and its equivalent and below must come from, so the recommendation must come from who? A. Senior staff committee. So senior staff committee. B. The supervising officer. C. Junior staff committee. Sorry, A is senior staff. So B. Supervising officer. C. Junior staff committee. and D, management committee. So quickly going to the correct options. So for question 11, which of the following statement is correct in the case of deferment of increment? So in case of deferment of increment, of course, period to the deferment, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office informs the officer in writing stating the period of deferment. Yes. So it's the PS that write, and then the period of deferment shall be stated. Then for option 12, so the body that will write recommendation to the PANSEC or head of extraministerial office in respect of dismissal of officers on grade level 06 and below is the junior staff committee. That is option C. So question 13, for all cases of withholding or deferment, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office shall inform the, so when the PS have decided to defer or withhold increments, so whom should he inform? So A, Accountant General of the Federation and the Auditor General of the Federation, or he will inform B, the head of the Civil Service of the Federation and the Auditor General for the Federation, or is it Accountant General of the Federation and the head of the Civil Service of the Federation? Who shall he inform? Then D, head of Civil Service of the Federation and the Federal Civil Service Commission. So note your answer. Question 14. If decision to restore officers' increment, which had earlier been withdrawn or deferred, is taken, who shall be responsible to bring the defer to the notice of the officer? Who again shall bring the notice when decision to restore is taken? So A, is it the head of Civil Service of the Federation? B, the Accountant General of the Federation? C, the Auditor General of the Federation? Or D, the Permanent Secretary or Head of Extraministerial Office? So whose duty is that? Then question 15. What is the ultimate outcome of misconduct? A, reduction in rank or dismissal. B, termination or retirement. C, deferment or withholding increment. And D, transfer or posting. So quickly your correct answers. So we now go to question 13. So for all cases of withholding or deferment, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office shall inform the A, Accountant General of the Federation and the Auditor General for the Federation, because that is a financial matter. So the correct option for question 13 is A. So the Accountant General for the Federation and the Auditor General must be informed. Then for question 14, if the decision to restore officers' increment which had earlier been withdrawn or deferred is taken, so it is the duty of the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office to inform the officer. So the correct option is D. Then for question 15, what is the ultimate outcome of misconduct? The ultimate outcome of misconduct is termination or retirement. That is option B, termination or retirement. So moving forward, question 16, which of these is not true in all cases of termination for inefficiency? So which is not true in all cases of termination for inefficiency? So A, if the leave is longer than the period of notice, the officer shall be sent on leave and the period of notice absorbed by the leave. Is it true or is it not true? Then B, the officer shall be given 3 months notice or paid 1 month salary in lieu of notice. So is it true or not true in the case of a termination for inefficiency? Then C, notice of 1 calendar month shall be given unless other period is appropriate in the light of a particular officer's term of service. Then D, if it is decided that the officer shall leave the service immediately without notice, he shall be paid emolument equivalent to the period of notice. The period of notice shall include any leave to which the officer is entitled. So which of the statements is not true? Then question 17, mention any 10 acts of misconduct. Mention any 10 acts of misconduct. Maybe before we now go to mention any of those 10, let's give the correct answer for question 16. So which says which of in all cases of termination for inefficiency. So the correct option is that the officer shall be given 3 months. No, what we saw was 1 month, 1 calendar month. So the officer shall be given 3 months notice or paid 1 month salary in lieu. No, the officer, so the correct option that is not applicable is B. So the number of period that we saw was that the officer will be given 1 calendar month and not 3 months. So it's option B. So mentioning the any 10 misconduct of only 10 acts of misconduct. So we have A, the scandalous conduct, and we saw that under scandalous conduct we had improper behavior, immoral behavior, unruly behavior, assault, battery. We also saw drunkenness and others. Then other acts of misconduct include refusal to proceed on transfer or accept posting, habitual lateness to work, deliberate delay in treating official documents, failure to keep records, unauthorized removal of public records, dishonesty, negligence, sleeping on duty, improper or inappropriate or immodest dressing while on duty, hawking merchandise within office premises, refusal to take or carry out lawful instructions from superior officers, malingering, insubordination, and discourteous behavior to the public. So any 10 of these. Question 21. When an officer becomes aware of misconduct by another officer, what is the first duty? So if you become aware of misconduct by another officer, what is the first duty you have to do? A, to report the misconduct to the head of department. B, to report to the permanent secretary of extraministerial office. C, report to an internal ethics committee, or D, report to an officer superior to the officer. So question 22. The director human resource, on receipt of the report on misconduct, considered it necessary that the officer should be interdicted. Such recommendation is made in his report to, so who would the director HR make report to? A, is it Federal Civil Service Commission? B, head of service of the Federation? C, permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office? Or D, honorable minister? So question 23. How should disciplinary proceedings be handled against a female staff which might have been taken during the period of her maternity leave? So how can we handle such disciplinary procedure? So A, the proceedings shall continue. B, postponement of proceedings can prejudice the proceedings against her. C, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office decides whether or not to proceed. And D, proceedings shall be postponed until the leave has expired. So which is appropriate? So moving to the correct answers for question 21. So the report to an officer superior to the officer involved. So whenever you see misconduct as an officer, misconduct by another officer, you have to report to the superior officer, to the officer involved. So that is option D. So for question 27, the director human resource reports to permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office. That is option C. So if the director of human resource receive report on misconduct, so and considers it necessary that the officer should be interdicted, such recommendation shall be made in his report to the permanent secretary, head of extraministerial office. That's option C. Then for question 23, the correct option is the proceedings shall be postponed until the leave has expired. So disciplinary proceedings on female staff who is on maternity leave shall be postponed until the leave has expired. So next question, 24. Once a superior officer receives a notice of misconduct of his subordinate. So if a senior officer receives a notice of misconduct of his subordinate, what must he do without delay? What should he further do? A. The superior officer shall report the misconduct to the Director of Human Resources through the head of department. B. The superior officer reports to the permanent secretary. C. The superior officer shall offer the subordinate counseling first before any action. Then D. The superior officer may ignore the case if the misconduct seems minor. Question 25. At the appropriate time of the investigation on an officer after a report on misconduct is made, one of these may apply. A. The officer may request a immediate trial. B. The officer may be suspended. C. The case may be forgotten. And D. The superior officer may dismiss the accused. So which is applicable? Question 26. When an accused officer is informed that on a specific day the question of his dismissal shall be brought before the board and he shall be required to appear before it to defend himself and shall be entitled to call witnesses, so his failure to appear shall invalidate the proceedings of the board. True or false? So quickly, your correct options, your answers. Now I'm moving forward to the correct answer. So question 24. So once a superior officer receives a notice of misconduct of his subordinate, so the first thing he's to do is that the superior officer shall report the misconduct to the Director of Human Resources through his head of department. So that is the first thing to do. You report to Director of Human Resources through the head of his department. That is option A. Then for question 25, at the appropriate time of investigation on an officer after a report on misconduct is made, so he may be suspended. At appropriate time, he may be suspended. That is option B. Then for question 2, which is that when an accused officer is informed that on a specific day the question of his dismissal shall be brought before the board and he shall be required to appear before it to defend himself and shall be entitled to call witnesses. So his failure to appear shall not invalidate the proceeding of the board. So it's false. It's false that his failure to appear shall invalidate. No, his failure to appear, whether he appears or not, the proceeding is still valid, so it shall not invalidate the proceeding. So the correct answer is false. It's false. So his failure to appear shall not invalidate. So moving on, question 27. In consideration of disciplinary procedure, the query issued to an officer alleged to have committed misconduct shall have the following features, except that is features of the query issue. So the features of the query shall have the following except, so which of them is not applicable as the feature of the query that will be issued? 1. It must be related to the circumstances of the offense. 2. The query should be precise and to the point. 3. The rule and regulation which the officer has broken and the likely penalty. So 4. The officer shall be called upon to state in writing within the period specified in the query any grounds upon which he relies to exculpate himself. And then 5. Direct the officer to appear before a disciplinary panel. So which of them it should not be the content in the case of query issued to an officer alleged to have committed misconduct. Then 6. In serious cases which are likely to result in dismissal, the officer shall be given access to any document. So the options down, A says for only, that is, the officer shall be called upon to state in writing within the period specified. So does that apply or not? So option B says V only, that is direct the officer to appear before a disciplinary panel. Then option C says 4 and 6 only. 4 says the officer shall be called upon to state in writing within the specified period. Then option C says in serious cases which are likely to result in dismissal, the officer shall be given access to any document. So then option D says 6 only. So which of them is not part of the feature of query? So which of them is not applicable? So question 28, we have, in the event that Federal Civil Service Commission, after considering the representations of the accused officer and is of the opinion that the officer does not deserve to be dismissed but deserves some other punishment, the commission may implement any of this. So when the commission finds out that the officer does not deserve to be dismissed but deserve any other punishment, so what would the commission do? So the commission may implement any of this. A, send warning letter to the officer's MDA, or B, post the officer to another MDA, or impose on the punishment as it considers up necessary, or where necessary set up board of inquiry for further investigation. Then D, put the officer on a close supervision. So which of them can they do? Will the commission do? So forwarding to the answers. So for question 27, so the only feature that is not part of the query is direct the officer to appear before a disciplinary panel. No, the query will not direct officer to start appearing before a disciplinary panel. So but every other items are part of the content of the query. Of course, the query must relate to the circumstances, and the query should be precise to the point, and of course the query should also contain the rules and regulations the officer has broken, and of course the query should direct the officer to the query should also call upon the officer to state in writing, that is response to the query, within a specified time the grounds on which he relies to exculpate himself. Yes. And of course, if it's in a serious case, the officer shall be given access to any document. So but he can never be called to appear before disciplinary action, just on the query. So that is the correct option, number 5, that is B only. Then for question 28, so when the Civil Service Commission finds out that the officer does not deserve dismissal but any other punishment, so the commission can impose on the officer such punishment as it considers appropriate, or where necessary set up a board of inquiry for further investigation. So that is what the commission will do. That is option 6, C. So going further, question 29. If it is presented to the Federal Civil Service Commission that an officer has been found guilty of misconduct, and the commission does not consider the alleged misconduct serious enough to warrant proceedings under the rule with a view to dismissal, the commission shall proceed with all of the following except now. If it is presented to the Federal Civil Service Commission that an officer has been found guilty of misconduct, and the commission does not consider the alleged misconduct serious enough to warrant proceedings under the rule with a view to dismissal, the commission shall proceed with all of the following except A, it may cause an investigation to be made into the matter in such a manner as it considers proper. B, the officer shall be entitled to know the whole case made against him and shall have adequate opportunity of making his defense. C, the commission may close the case without any further action. And D, if as request the commission decides that the allegation is proved, it may impose any other punishment upon the officer, such as reduction in rank, withholding, or deferment of increment. So which of them is not appropriate? So that is C. The correct option is C. So the commission may close the case without any further action. No, that is not true. But every other items are applicable. So moving forward, question 30. Where it is necessary that the commission sets up a board of inquiry after studying the representations on the issue of misconduct submitted to it, the composition of the board of inquiry shall consist of. So now looking at the composition of the board of inquiry, that should consist of the following except so one, that A, not less than 3 persons, one of whom shall be appointed chairman by the commission. Is that true? Then B, the members of the board shall be selected with due regard to the status of the officer involved in the disciplinary case. So composition of the board of inquiry. Then C, the head of the officers department shall be a member of the board. Will his head of department be a member of the board? D, members of the board shall be selected with due regard to the nature of the complaint, which is the subject of inquiry. So which of them is not appropriate? Then question 31. If witnesses are called by the board to give evidence before it against the accused officer, which of these shall be applicable? A, the officer shall be entitled to put questions to the witnesses. B, documentary evidences shall be used against the officer, whether previously supplied to him or not. And C, the witnesses' testimonies shall be accepted without questioning. Is that true? And D, the witnesses can present a pre-recorded statement. So which is applicable? So quickly, the correct answers for question 30, where it is necessary that the commission sets up a board of inquiry. Of course, the head of the department of the officer involved is not a member of the board. So the correct option is option C, that said the head of the officer department shall be a member of the board. No, the head of the department is never a member of the board of inquiry. That is option C. Then for question 13, if witnesses are called by the board to give evidence, of course, the officer involved is entitled to put questions to the witnesses. I think the question says if witnesses are called on the board before it's the accused officer, which of these shall apply? Which of these shall apply? So he is entitled to put questions to the witnesses about their statement. So that is option A. So 31 option A, 30 option C. So moving forward, 32. In a situation, the commission does not approve the officer's dismissal. So this is a case whereby the commission does not approve the officer's dismissal and also does not consider that any penalty should be imposed. So which of the following shall apply? So whereby the commission does not consider that the officer should be dismissed nor apply any penalty. So what should now follow? A, the officer shall be reinstated and be compensated for the interrogations. B, the officer shall be reinstated and his salary commences immediately without payment of any denial if he was interdicted or suspended. C, the officer shall be reinstated and transferred to another MDA. And D, the officer shall be reinstated and be entitled to the full amount of salary denied him if he was interdicted or suspended. So which shall apply? Whereby the commission does not find the officer that the case does not warrant the officer to be dismissed, or consider it that any penalty should be imposed. So which of them should apply? Note your answer. Question 33. What is the maximum duration of all disciplinary proceedings not involving criminal case? So the maximum duration for all disciplinary cases not involving criminal case. A, 60 days, B, 30 days, C, 3 months, and D, 45 months. So quickly, your correct options. So for question 13, the correct option, so in a situation whereby commission does not approve the dismissal of officer and also does not consider it that any penalty should be imposed, of course the officer shall be reinstated and be entitled to the full amount of salary denied him if he was interdicted or suspended. That is option D. Then for question 33, the correct option is 60 days. So the maximum duration of all disciplinary procedures is 60 days except if it involves criminal case. That is A. So 32 is option D, 33 is option A. So moving forward, question 34 says, which of the following statement is correct? So which of the following statement is correct? A, officers may render professional assistance to institutions or government agencies during working hours for the benefit of the country with or without seeking for permission. Is that correct? B, officers can accept remuneration for assistance rendered to another government or institution during working hours. Is that correct? C, the amount of the remuneration for an officer who rendered assistance to another government must be paid into the treasury on deposit until the order of government as to the share, if any, which may be received by the officer is known. Is that true? And D, officers can receive part payment of the assistant rendered to another government or institution pending the determination of the permanent secretary. So which of them is correct? Which of the statement is correct? Then next, for each of the following statements, state true or false. So question 35 says, fine shall be imposed on any officer as a punishment for an offense committed in the course of his duties. Is it true or false that fine can be imposed as punishment for offense committed? Then 36, if the public revenue sustains a loss by reason of the neglect or fault of an officer, he will be liable to be surcharged with the amount, and any sum due to him from the government may be withheld in satisfaction of such charge. True or false? So going forward, the correct option for 34 that says which of the following statement is correct. So the only statement that is correct among all those, the amount is that the amount of the remuneration for an officer who rendered assistance to another government must be paid into the treasury on deposit until the order of government as to share, if any, which may be received by the officer is known. That is option C is the correct one. Remember, the officer cannot even render except he gets approval. Except with approval. Yes, he will not even render. And of course, he cannot receive remuneration. So any remuneration must be paid into the treasury until the order from government as to the share, if the officer will receive any one, is known. So that is option C. Then for question 35, fine shall be imposed. No, on no condition shall fine be imposed as a punishment for an officer that commits an offense. So if an officer commits an offense, fine can never be imposed. So that is false. That is false. Fines cannot be imposed. So 35 is false. Then 36, if the public revenue sustains a loss of the neglect of sustains a loss by reason of neglect or fault of an officer, he will be liable to be surcharged. Yes, that is true. And the sum due to him from the government may be. That is true. So this is true. Fine is false. So going further, thank you. So we have come to the end of the lesson. So if you've stayed through this far, you are well done, and thank you. Please do not forget, check your screen. Do you still see the word subscribe? Is it still there on your screen? If it's still there, please hit on it. Hit on the subscribe button. Hit on the subscribe button And of course, like, comment, and also share. So subscribe, like, comment, and also share, because if this material you stayed this far, it means you find value in it. That is why you remain up to this far. And of course, if it's of value to you, it will also be of value to another. So it's not costing you a dime. Share to your friend also to benefit. So the material is made free of charge. So let also your friends benefit from it. So the next topic on discipline, so in the second episode on discipline, we shall be considering serious misconduct and then conduct prejudicial to security of the state. Be on our next topic, and I hope to see you on the next episode on discipline. Thank you, and God bless you. Please don't forget, like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe in order to get our materials in real time once it is uploaded. God bless you.